Hey listeners, welcome back to another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong. We have a very exciting guest today, and the conversation we had is just incredible. This is another guest that was a dream to have on, and I'm so grateful. Without further ado, today's incredible guest is Jillian Mercado, actress, model, advocate, and all-around just cool person. Truly, it was a dream to get to interview her and talk, and she's just so cool and so nice. And I feel like so lucky to have gotten to spend an hour just gabbing together, the three of us.
I've been following her a lot on social media since like forever, and just to be able to chat with her, I was so hyped, especially as a woman who also has muscular dystrophy, who's also Latina. I was like, yes, this is my person.
Yes, I feel like getting to listen to the two of you talk was just like such a joy, and I really think that episodes like this have the power to really change what people's perceptions are, because I think that muscular dystrophy has a lot of very outdated perceptions in the public eye, and I am really glad that people get to see, especially like you and Jillian are two of the coolest people I know. So just giving muscular dystrophy a very cool image.
Yes, we're not how we're depicted in media.
Absolutely.
So this is all about that, and it's important to challenge those views because they're harmful. And now we're just changing that with this podcast. Which is,
yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this for my job. Like, it's incredible.
Truly so incredible. It feels unreal. And I hope our listeners feel the same way listening to this episode. It's really exciting. Let's get into it.
Oh my goodness, you are such an inspiration. Wow, you really are. You're so strong. Can I pet your service dog? Ugh. 1, 2, 3, let's go! We are artists, parents, teachers, good guys, bad guys, students, leaders. I'm not your inspiration, yeah, I'm fully who I am. Got my own expectations that don't fit into your plans. I'm not your sad story, so I wrote it in this song. Everything you know about disability is wrong. That everything you know. Yeah, everything you know about disability is wrong.
Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong. And today, we're joined by Jillian Mercado. She's an activist, she's an actor, and just, like, the best person. And I'm so excited to have you here. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here as well, and to talk about all things, everything. So I'm ready.
Yes.
Hit me.
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm so excited you're here. We got to do a little pre-call a couple weeks ago, just kind of get to know each other. And, you know, I don't have the best social cues, but I will say I felt like we were instant besties. So it was great. I was just excited.
I agree. I would say the same. It was a great conversation. Honestly, I wish that was recorded because it was such a good conversation. But we're going to do even a better conversation now. So.
Totally. Absolutely. So, we like to start the show with a question. And since our show is Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong, we want to know, what do people get wrong about you?
Oh man, probably my existence. Just last week I was in Mexico City, and there was a lot of people who were surprised that I knew Spanish because I was talking in Spanish, and a lot of the comments were like, "Wow, you speak so eloquently." And as much as I really wanted to take that as like a amazing, awesome thing, because my mom always loves to say, like, you don't speak enough Spanish, which is true, I don't. There was a lot of like ableist undertones of that comment. that I could not like shake off. So I think it's just, I think our existence as far as like just living and just like being is so sometimes deep rooted in ableist and stereotypes, that it's hard to like just like live, just exist and be. Because there's a lot of people that still have this notion that, you know, we can't live by ourselves. We can't like have a social life. We can't do all of these things that just are so basic, that I wish that people understood that we're as human as everyone else.
Yeah, it feels like people just can't help themselves but make their assumptions known. And usually people's assumptions are entirely wrong.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes half of me, I don't blame them because of the unfortunate representation that has been out in the media, or just like, also it has to do with like healthcare, not getting enough access to healthcare. It has to do with like accessibility, not being able to, it was really tough, at least for me, to move around in Mexico City because the streets were so uneven and there were so many stairs, like probably like 50 times more stairs that there is in California where I live. So it was really hard. So there's sometimes I do understand where people see me in places and they're so amazed and they're so shocked, and it's like a whole hoopla because it you know I feel like if I were to have lived in Mexico City, it would have been really incredibly hard for me to do anything basic, or even go to the grocery store. There were steps, so sometimes I understand it, but I feel like nowadays, because of social media and just the internet being so accessible in certain places, that having that like ableist mindset, especially with a grown adult, like it's hard for me to like sympathize.
No, totally. That makes complete sense. And you can understand why people have the assumptions they do, but it doesn't make it less harmful to have to hear. And especially, that's something I've kind of noticed, because the internet is so accessible in some places, but some people it's so inaccessible for. I feel like sometimes you end up in like, well, I end up in kind of like microcosms of people where I feel like everyone is on the same page. We're all learning about ableism at the same time. And then you end up in a new setting and it's like, oh, wait, there's whole sections of the population that still think that disabled people like can't exist outside of a nursing home.
I actually,
Yeah, and
I'm
like,
sorry, go ahead, Erin.
oh, go ahead, go ahead. Oh, you do.
Oh, I was just gonna add on to that. My friend just reminded me this one time where I was heading towards. I'm laughing because it's ridiculous, but I was heading towards an event that it was like a really like star-studded event, and all these people who, if I like start naming people, you're like, oh my God, that's crazy that they were there. And so I was wearing a gown. A gown. Let me just give you a picture. I was wearing a bright blue ruffle gown. And I remember getting into an Uber, which took like 45 minutes to get to me. And the guy literally asked me if I was going. He was like, wow, you're dressed so fancy for going to the hospital. And I was like, excuse me? And he was like, you're not going to. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And at first I thought it was a joke, but he was very serious. And I'm like, I'm going to, what? Like, who dresses this fancy? It was just like the complete disconnect. And I'm like, wow, people really think that the only other places we do go to are hospitals or like nursing homes or anything medical,
Yeah.
for that matter. And that really like puts so many things in perspective, and like every day it humbles me thinking about that because there's so much work to be done. But also I feel like people who have disabilities have been in these streets since the beginning of time, so like there's no excuse for having that like comment. Um,
No.
so yeah.
But like the other day, I went out to a restaurant, and some guy I don't know said, "It's so great that you're out of the house." I'm like, Yeah, I mean, not really. I hate going outside. And it was just like, I get comments like that all the time,
It's really,
and I don't understand.
sometimes that there were times where I was really frustrated when I was younger, and I would like rebel and I'd get really mad. And nowadays, when I get comments like that, because I as well get comments like that constantly, I usually like if they're like, "Oh wow, that's amazing that you're here." I'm like, "Oh my God, that's amazing that you're here and that we're here together in the same place." And they're so like, and I'm like, "Yeah, you see how dumb that sounded out loud? Yeah, it sounds pretty ridiculous if you ask me." So,
That's a great response.
like
And
it
I
hit
have to
him with the
stand up with
same,
that.
it hit him with the same energy.
My energy is just like, yeah, and I
Yeah.
leave.
Because I feel like if anybody would say that to anybody else who may not have a visible disability, they would be like, right, cool.
Yeah, I think if having a non-apparent disability, I think if someone said that to me, I'd be like, is this like a threat? Like, what? Do you know something about me? Like, what? Why would you comment on that? And I think that that's such a weird thing of like, I gotta hypothesize that they think, or it just like feels great for them to say something like that. Like they think it's gonna be the best thing you've ever heard, which is like, what? Like just use, and again, going back on that people's assumptions just take over. I feel like use your context clues. Like, where did all of your context clues go?
Out the
That's
window.
wild.
And and sometimes I like sympathize, and sometimes I like overanalyze. And I remember my therapist being like, "Stop overworking. You're not responsible for other people's minds or thoughts. So if it feels offensive, it was offensive. No matter if it was like well intended, no matter if they like wanted to make themselves feel good about themselves, but like at the end of the day, you're as human as they are. So that comment wouldn't have gone like okay with anybody else. So what makes you like different?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, you're so right."
Yeah, that's
This is why I
a
pay you
great
the big
therapist.
bucks. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I love that. Like, I think that's a conversation that's kind of become more mainstream about a lot of different intersectional identities. Just this idea of like, oh, we don't have to do the labor of like rationalizing why these people have these outdated opinions.
Yeah, I
That's a
choose.
great
No.
therapist.
Yeah, I choose to like, be an activist in my community. I don't have to. It's not a contract that I signed when I was like 2 years old to be like the teacher of all teachers. I do it because, I want to. It's like a thing that I agreed on with myself, like, oh, if I'm in a situation where I can teach, I will. But it doesn't mean I have to. It doesn't mean that any person who has a disability needs to be an activist. And I feel like sometimes even people in our own community get frustrated with other people who also have disabilities, no matter if it's invisible or visible, that we need to talk about it, that we should talk about it. And not everyone has like that, like energy, strength, or mindset to really take on a very, 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 very taxing job.
Yeah, and there's that saying that existence is resistance, and like simply just living is you're doing that. And I used to be really involved heavily in disability advocacy, and I still am, especially at work. But I can't spend time after work digging through social media and like being a disability advocate that way anymore, because it's so mentally exhausting, because you deal with ableism every day, and just to see it again online is a lot, and it really helps my mental health to step back. And that isn't to say we have to be silent all the time. and they should speak out, but not, yeah, you know.
Yeah, there's not that. I do think that there is a kind of feeling that if you have a disability, you're automatically like thrust into being an activist simply because in some ways when you live in a non-accessible world, you simply have to advocate for yourself. But I think that that's crucial to allow yourself to have time when you're unplugged or not doing that, especially, I mean, both Erin and Jillian, the work you do, like Jillian, your activism work, and that you're constantly talking about things and working for better representation. Erin, you work at a disability service nonprofit. Like, this is your 40 plus hours a week that you're doing this all the time. It could be really easy to feel like, oh, I need to do this outside of work too. But then when do you rest? And rest is so important.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't rest, then you can't do the work.
Yeah, you can't, it's like sleeping, we have to sleep at night because that's a way of our body like resetting and like healing. And I feel like if we don't have that disconnect of like for example, my trip to Mexico was essentially a vacation, or it was supposed to be a vacation, but then I find myself in like these like little like pocket holes of like, oh, let's go back to work and like advocate, because these people really are not understanding it as much as like me being outside. It's like you said, Erin, it's already a form of activism, just like doing things that are, maybe not the usual of someone who has a visible disability. And I'm squinting my face because it's even hard to say out loud. But, like just existing, I feel like it's already a form of activism. And sometimes it's just hard to like switch off that, like, because then it just eats inside of you. Like for me, personally speaking, like if I don't say something at the moment, or if I'm not sarcastic at the moment of the timing of, I obviously pick my battles with people, but it like eats me, and I won't let it go. Like it'll just like eat inside of me, and I'm like, oh, that would have been such a perfect moment of teaching for that person, which I'm working on. But it's a difficult situation to be in, especially if you're, if you're like us, where we're very vocal on like, the indifferences that are out there currently, and still the misrepresentation that people have continued to narrate about our lives.
Yeah, I think that picking your battles and working on it is such a like lifetime learning kind of thing, because I definitely relate to that, where sometimes I'll think like, oh, this isn't worth it for me to try to educate this person. But then like I'll say, oh, I want to save my energy and go about my day. But then the rest of the day, I'm in my own head thinking, wow, I wish I would have said something to that person, and wondering what they're going to say to someone else. And it's really hard to kind of balance that level of like, is my own piece correcting and educating, or is my own piece ignoring? And I don't think there's an answer to that. I think it's got to be a lifelong practice of finding when you need your own piece.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like we can save everyone, from this like horror of like ableist mindset. But I'm trying really hard. Like there's things that I don't even post them on social media that I live through every single day, that I wish that there was like a tiny little camera that's just like following everyone, me, without the other person knowing that there's a camera, because there's so many things that happen sometimes. And my sister, bless her heart, she's like adorable, and she's like, you should carry around a GoPro like on my chest on all the time. And I'm like, see, but that's the thing, I just don't want to, like, we shouldn't have to, and it's already like in the moment, in the heat of the moment, it's already such like a shock value to me. Like I am 36 years old, and there's still times where I'm just like, I can't even fathom what is currently happening right now to me at this moment now. Like sometimes I really can't. And a quick example could be like the other day, over a month ago, I went to New York, and this like person who takes the wheelchairs from the airplane to the below deck was gaslighting me of how to work my own chair. And I'm breathing because it's still so present in my mind that I just could not understand how he really thought that he could outdo me on my own assistive device. Essentially breaking my chair because it came to me broken, and I was telling him that I've had this chair, I've been in a wheelchair for a very long time, and there's no way that like if this was handled correctly, it wouldn't have gotten to me like this. To which he kept telling me of how many classes he took and how many courses you need to take to get this job, and how they handle chairs, and literally telling me step by step how he did it. And I was like, those could all be true, but you still broke my chair. And the fact that you are telling me how to use my own chair is like me coming to your home and giving you a tour to your own home. You're gonna know your home more than I know because I don't live there. Same with my chair. I live in my chair is part of my body. So you telling me how to handle my chair, it's pretty hilarious. But even moments like that, I was telling my sister, and she's like, "Oh my God, that would have been such a great post." And I'm like, it's just so hard to like know when these things happen, because it doesn't happen 24/7. But the times that it does happen, I'm always just like so taken back by it, because it happens more than I like it to happen all the time, and it's always very shocking to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry you dealt with that. That's also just like in an airline situation when it's so like dangerous to fly, knowing that these people are, I mean, airlines are damaging wheelchairs at a ridiculously unacceptable rate. And so that's wild. And I love the analogy of giving you a tour of your own home. I think that's really, that just like sets it. I think I hope that there's someone who's listening to this episode that's like, oh, I never thought of it like that. I should probably not be trying to educate people on their own experiences or their own equipment.
I do my
Yeah.
best to try to like give examples that it's so like duh kind of a situation. And again, it's overworking and trying to make people who clearly have a good intention, but like everything they're saying is really ableist to like try to like bring it back home. Let's just wind it back a little bit because I'm just gonna show you how ridiculous this sounds. Again, making them feel way more comfortable than I do, but I always try to remember that representation, whether that's in the media or just like out in the streets, are so not great. That like I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I'm just like, oh, maybe you just haven't encountered a lot of people like myself, and let's just go with that for now, and hopefully like nobody else ever has to go through this ever, because this is traumatizing in so many levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said before, like, I think a lot of the intention of the things people say is not mean. They're trying to be nice, but it still has a negative impact on us.
Yeah,
And we can't control how we feel.
yeah, exactly.
And it adds to ableism. It adds to misconceptions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's just so much to hold to the like. I mean, that's part of the reason we wanted to make this podcast, was having a space where we like don't necessarily have to be like, oh, and I get why they said that. Like, they represent, like, I get it, but we can also just be like, yeah, but it's still super effed up. Like, it's still messed up.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's no matter how well intended people can be, which, we hold space for that too. There's also space for being really mad and pissed and like just annoyed by just comments that my mom always told me to like think before you talk. And a lot of people don't. But people think that like we're just like some forum on Reddit where it's not like a real person, actually computing what you're saying. Like, yes, I am a real person. I am a human. I have this, we have this pretty much same anatomy. inside, which means that what you're saying I am taking home, you know? So we should just, just as a lesson to the world, just be careful what you say out loud. That's it. Or even like what you type on social media, because there is another person who is reading that.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that, I want to talk about your career and things as well, but before we get to that, how has your interactions with social media changed as your career has evolved, as your platform's gotten bigger, you have more eyes on you? How do you deal with that, manage that? I'd imagine that the number of ableist comments becomes somewhat exponential when you have I think that there's probably some people who just see like famous disabled person, I can say whatever I want. Like, and how have you handled that? How do you protect your peace online?
I think at the beginning it was a little tougher. I remember once my mom calling me because she read a comment that somebody posted in Spanish, and it was just like really mean, like extremely mean. And she called me crying, and she's like, "Why would anybody say that about you? Like, I don't understand. Why are people so mean?" And I started laughing because my first reaction to anything is to laugh. And like literally we're working on this, but I remember being like, "Ma, like, they don't know who I am at all. They don't know who I am. And, like, they're just people who are unfortunately really sad and lonely, and they need to, like, project these, like, insecurities that they have to me, because I'm pretty sure they wouldn't tell me this in person. Like, I'm 100% sure these comments would not be in my face if I was actually there." So there's definitely like a disassociation of like person and, profile, I guess, or something like that. So at first I used to take it to heart. I think now it's almost, I think people with disabilities find humor in everything. And that's how we've been able to survive. It's like our surviving mechanism is to like find humor in like the tiniest things. So like now the way I see it is, well, if you leave like a really mean comment, I automatically delete it and block the person. I don't even like try to like know I don't even try to message them. I just like, unless there's a learning experience for the viewer, then I'll respond. But if it's something like just like this person just had a bad day, I'm just gonna delete it and block, and that's it. And then in the end. There's other times where I leave it, or especially if it's like a personal DM and not a comment, I do read it, just to see what the kids are talking about these days. And then I go, wow, this person really spent 10 minutes to search my name, to type with their fingers, or to type, or whatever, to leave a message, however they're leaving messages. And that was a time of their life that I was a part of. That makes me feel so special and so nice. Like, aw, that's so sweet of you to spend that time for me. Oh, I love it. Thank you. And then I keep moving on.
I think that's a really great mindset to have, and also just that reminder of like, we got finite hours here, and you're spending it like there's fresh air to breathe and fun memories to make with your friends. Like there's delicious meals to eat in this life, and you're choosing to leave hateful comments. Like, and it makes me sad for the people who are like that lonely, or what's happened in their life that led to that. But it's such, what you said, that you don't think people would say that in person. I think that obviously there's still ableist comments in person, but there's something about behind the keyboard where people just say things that would never come out of their mouths. So I think that's great. And I also am glad you brought up your mom calling and being hurt by it, because I think that sometimes people, especially when commenting on someone with a certain level of status, whether it's like celebrity, whatever, in that they think like there's a certain disconnect of like, this isn't a real person. But like, their family members have to see that. Like your mom had to read that mean comment, and I don't think that person thought about that. Like that's truly terrible.
I mean, they don't
And
even
I
think
know,
about themselves. That's the sad part, and that's the heartbreaking part for me. Is like, as much as I like, my first reaction is to laugh or whatever. I do like, because I'm a very empathetic person. I do think about like what would have gotten to the point of that person actually writing that. Like, I go
yeah.
back into like the story.
Mm-hmm.
What's the story behind the message? And like, but for me, deleting and like blocking the person, I do think about everybody else who's reading it. I think about like me at 8 years old, if I had social media and I was like, finding some sort of hope or inspiration, or just like any kind of a sign of like, of existing in this world. I do think about that person reading that, and like, how would they feel if they like saw like, my successes and the things that I've done, and then reading that comment and being like, well, this is a sign that I should never, you know? And it takes that like tiny little, teeny little like, comment to like really discourage a person. And I don't know that from personal experience, because it was very hard for me to like find some sort of like glimmer of hope or a sign to like, you know, tell me that this is something that I really want to do in my life. And it's even harder when you're growing up in a place or town or country or world for that matter, that there's a lot of ableist everything everywhere. It's hard to like grasp onto the hope, especially if there's nothing to hold on to. So you're holding on to yourself for dear life. So I
Yeah.
think about that every time I see these comments, and that's why I don't even bother sometimes to reply or to teach this person a lesson, because I don't got time for that. But also, like, time is money, and I don't want that person to see that. Not to say that I'm blinding everyone, or like removing the hardship that it does go into being someone who has a disability. But I feel like we have a lot of that already everywhere. So I'm not doing a disservice to that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I do my best to like have my social media be as a safe space as possible, you know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I think that's one of the sweetest and most care-filled things I've ever heard. Explanation of like block and delete, of that level of like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know who's seeing it and who's seeing themselves or what they can be in you, and
Yeah.
keeping that space safe for them, I think, is really beautiful. I'm glad you said that, and I think that's a really wonderful way to like curate what you said, a safe space online. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, we deal with ableism every day, so transitioning away from that a little bit. So you got your start in your career, correct me if I'm wrong, in fashion and modeling, correct? What got you interested in fashion? What was that kind of trajectory like?
I feel like this podcast will just be about my mom, because my mom was the one who introduced me to fashion without, I think actually my parents. Let me kind of give my dad a little 2 cents there. They both introduced me to fashion without knowing that it was fashion. And I don't think I knew what fashion was until I was like probably in middle school maybe. Um my dad would like bring my mom like these like authentic like crocodile shoes and snake leather stitch or whatever. I've been a vegetarian for now 9 years now, so even saying that I'm like cringe about it. But I was so like amazed that this was like even a thing. I was like asking all the questions. I'm like, how do they do this? Wait, this is amazing design, blah 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 blah. And my mom, well, she actually told me this a couple months ago, which I didn't know. So keep asking your parents questions, because you will find out new things about yourself that you didn't even know. I was almost born in a factory, in a clothing factory. My mom hid her pregnancy from her boss till it was like too obvious. Um, and then she was like, I quit my job and a week later you were born. And I was like, wait, what? You are a mad woman. That's like absolutely wild. The fact that you like, kept sewing clothes in this factory until I almost popped out. So I was kind of born, she was born in it, kind of in fashion. And then I remember applying for colleges in high school, and my mom being like, you have the privilege of like picking whatever happiest in. Whatever career you choose, we will like obviously be supportive, but make sure that you're actually like excited for this. Like, don't do it for us. Don't do it for the trend. Don't do it for like, do it for yourself, because you're the one that's going to be stuck with it every single morning. You're the one that's going to have to find motivation to be there. And fortunately enough, like, we immigrated from Dominican Republic to make it easier for myself and my two sisters. And that meant that we could do whatever we wanted, which was it's kind of a power to have, and a privilege for that matter. So fashion, I was like, I want to do something in fashion, but I don't know what. And she's like, that's a great direction. Just go to a fashion school and figure it out. And that's literally kind of what I did. I went to FIT in New York and spent 4 years figuring out what I wanted to do, and kind of like landed in a modeling. My first modeling job was a worldwide campaign, and really like everything kind of exploded as far as like representation for me went, because I wasn't seeing myself in anything that I loved doing. And I was like, how can a place that I feel like home be so discouraging to see that nobody looks like me in it? So that kind of motivated me even harder. I'm also very stubborn. Maybe it has to do with my Taurus sign, but I'm like super, super stubborn. So I like needed to prove to myself in the world that like this was possible, because I saw it I saw it when I closed my eyes. So I don't understand why I didn't see it when I opened my eyes. So I kind of made it a mission of myself to like change that narrative as much as I could. And that landing me my worldwide campaign, and being like, well, I really wanted to be an editor for a magazine to hire people like myself. But like the world was like, you're the person that you wanted to hire. It was like a really cheesy moment, but I was like, I'm gonna go for this. And then yeah, so my first job was like 2014. And I haven't stopped since. And then 4 years ago, I landed my first acting job. And that was also like a moment of like, oh my God, also disabled people are not really represented great on television. Awesome. Another house to like bust open and blow up. And here we are.
So much to say about that. One, moms rock. we,
Yes,
this is a recurring
we
theme
love
on this
moms.
podcast. We love moms. And so that's wonderful. I love that. I love the almost born in it, and then just realizing it's your home, and you gotta clean up your home if it's not looking like you want it to. I really love that, and I think that you certainly have been one of the dominant leaders of like changing the way we think about who can be a model, and like just I think the work you've done has been incredible, and I think it's clear that it's come from following what feels like home, following what feels right. I think that that's a really empowering thing for our listeners to hear, that you as an activist are doing a lot of what quote unquote sometimes people think they should be doing. But you ended up there not because you felt like you should, but because it felt real, it felt like home, it felt like what you were supposed to be doing. And I think that that's a guiding light for people, to find those places that even if maybe it doesn't look like you're supposed to be there yet, trust the feeling. And if you think you're supposed to be there, you can be part of the making space for others to be there too.
Yeah,
I think that's
intuition
really
is always
wonderful.
right. Let me just as a broad human, like, follow your intuition. She will never fail. She will always guide you to, like, even when you go against it, like, and I'm using I'm using a pronoun on energy and the universe, but let's be real.
I
No,
think
no, no.
intuition uses she, her. Let's be she's probably a Taurus too. I'm also a
You
Taurus.
know? No way. That's awesome. Um, but like, tuition is always right, and I feel like there's a lot of things that people want to put against us. And I'm talking like living, as a person who's female identifying in this world is already hard enough. but like also having a disability on top of that sometimes can feel taxing, can feel like, a lot of weight. And I feel like sometimes I use that as a power almost, and kind of like an energy source for that matter, because I very, very believe that the universe doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. And I know for a fact that sometimes I'm just like, oh, why, Lord, why? Like, why are we here again? But then I found like always find myself in the most like magical situations where I'm like, if anything, I went through this so someone doesn't have to go through this, or I went through this so that somebody else can be like, oh my God, that's awesome. Here's a sign I've been waiting for to do this as well, you know? So there's like little moments that I do my best to try to find some sort of like energy source or light, because it's already tough out here being a human in this world. And there's so many things that are happening currently at the moment where I'm just like, ugh, why? Why are we like this to each other? But then there's those like teeny little moments, the little gold nuggets I try to find to like make it worthwhile sticking around.
I love that, and I think you bring up a good point of that, like different identities that are already a layer of what you have to deal with on this in this existence, in this society. And I know that one thing we really wanted to talk about was the intersectionality of queerness, race, disability. I know all three of us sit at different spots in those intersections, and I think that for myself at least, my queer identity is very connected to my autistic identity, because I've kind of, as I was discovering one, discovered the other. But I feel that that's probably, I'm just interested in both of your relationships and how that intersection plays a role in your life. Race as well. Lots of intersectionality going on.
Yeah, do you want to go first, Erin?
You can go
Okay.
first.
Okay. Yeah, I think as I grew older, I discovered so many different intersectionalities that I have and that I've always identified with, but I never like brought them with me, if that makes sense. I've always like either tucked away my queerness, or I tucked away me being like Latina because like it felt safer that way, or and then I had to realize that not only is that is such a privilege to have, but if I would tuck away one of them, I would only be giving like half of myself. I wouldn't be giving all of who I am. And I think that that's important, to be who you are in every scenario, no matter if it's dangerous, no matter if you feel unsafe, no matter if it's like uncomfortable feeling. But if you're not who you are the whole time, then, one, mistakes will be made. And two, nobody wants to live that way. Nobody wants, at the end of the day, nobody wants to like hide who they are, and I feel like there is room, to be who you are no matter what. Mind you, there's obviously outside forces that can prevent, safe environments or whatever, but I feel like, the most like toughest people that are around. Mind you, we don't have to be tough. We don't have to be warriors or anything like that. But I feel like the people who, have always been true to themselves live the happiest, even if they don't have riches and royalties and golds and, whatever material things. I think if you're able, at least with yourself, to be accepting of you, everything kind of follows through easier, I think. I think when you have like that hurt inside where you don't feel like you're complete because of outside forces, it makes life a little harder. But the most beautiful people I've ever met like accept themselves fully, whatever that looks like for them, and that's so inspiring to be surrounded by those people, or to have moments with those people, because that only makes me feel safer to be who I am, and to celebrate all my intersectionalities, and to be a proud Latina, and to be, screaming outside of an airplane how queer I am. So queer. Sometimes I'm like, Jesus, girl, so queer. And like really am out here with my disability community, and like yes, I do need extra time to get on the plane, and I will take that time to get on the plane, and y'all will wait. Okay, even if it's 10 minutes, I'm gonna take it, and being women and understanding that like yes, we should have autonomy of our own body, and there should be no questions or comments about it. That's just the end, period. And so there's times where I'm just really unsure why we're still talking about these situations because it just seems so redundant to me. And so, like, we have so many other important things to talk about, and we're really choosing to talk about this really doesn't compute in my mind. How, why, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yay,
as if it's like
equality.
it's still as if it's a debate when it's like there's no debate. This is our bodies. There's
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
no debate.
Right.
Like,
No, there shouldn't be. Like, why are we even talking about this? First of all.
wow, yeah.
And like, I have all those intersections, and all those identities are like under fire every
Every
day,
day.
and it's hard to hold all of that in yourself. But talking about moms, my mother always instilled in me, like, don't give a shit what other
I
people
love
think about you. Take up space and just be yourself. And if somebody doesn't like it, they don't matter in your life. So just forget it. And that to me is what propelled me to be so out about who I am. That's
I
my
love
Oh,
that.
it's so
story.
true, and I kind of want to add to that because I feel like sometimes, I mean, I know I used to be like this when I was younger, but sometimes I feel like, in places where we do take up space, physically and mentally speaking, I think that when I was younger, I used to tell my like used to be freak I used to freak out about taking other people's space, like taking extra time to get on the plane or like extra time to do anything for that matter. And then I would get into like these really negative thoughts where I start telling myself I'm a burden. I shouldn't have been here. Why did I even come here? Like now I'm like making these people like, delay. Maybe someone has the graduation. Like I really came up with stories in my mind. And then and then I had to be like, no, Jill, they're taking as much time as you're taking, maybe in different ways. It could be like vocally speaking, it could be like literally space speaking. What's so different about you? Like there's nothing different about you. You just need more time as they would need more time somewhere else. So when you humanize humans, which is funny to say, like you start kind of like where you say you start like no fuck, I'm gonna do me, and that's it, and the end. And that's it, and there shouldn't be more talk about it. So again, moms are right and they're the best, and I whoever is your mom, it could be a mother, it could be a mom literally, it could be whoever you like, even it could be yourself, but listen to those thoughts and voices because they're right, usually. Unless you're harming someone else, then they're not.
Right?
Then delete
Right.
them. Then go get some
Then
mental help because you need them. But if you're not harming anyone, then definitely
yeah.
listen to them.
My favorite thing to do is if I notice somebody getting frustrated with me taking up space, I will not move.
I love
I'll
it.
stay there, be in their
She's in
way,
protest.
and they'll just deal with it.
She's like, I will turn this to a sit protest.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. And I also think just bringing up that, with lots of different identities under attack, the feeling that maybe the outside world doesn't feel like a safe space. I think that that's when it becomes even more crucial to be true to who you are, because your inside world is the only world that there's some control on, and that has to be a safe space. And I know for myself it was not a safe space until I started accepting all parts of my identity. So I think that that's really important. And listeners, just hope you're making a safe space in your own mind. That's really, really important, and it's got to be step one, I think, for a lot of things.
And I think to add on to that, I think that there's times where it's even hard to find a safe space in your mind. But like, if anybody's listening and feels that way, the most like beautiful thing about, at least for the intersectionalities that I am a part of, I can't speak about others, but that I know, that I personally have gone through, there's so much magic in all of them, and there's such a community of people that love you and will hear you and that will sit there and like listen to anything. I know that the disability community has definitely like saved me in so many different situations. And I'm so thankful for that. I know that like my Latina community, as loud as they are, as messy, as like I'm like chaotic, we're such lovable people, and we will, you know, literally saw off a hand for someone else, um, to make sure they're safe and to make sure they're being seen. And I love that, and we definitely add spices to every conversation. So if anything, you will laugh. And I feel like I'm pretty blessed to say that like I've found like beautiful moments in all my intersectionality, and knowing that there's such a community of people there on the other side who like will accept me the way I am, you know? So if there anyone who's listening who feels like their mind is just like complete chaos and has like 30 tabs open on the computer in their head, know that there is someone else who will take and close each one of those out to make space for like new things. So definitely reach out.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I think that that's actually a really important like step that doesn't get talked about, is that like, you know, I say make a safe space in your mind, and I think that there's a thought that has to be something you do alone, but it doesn't. Yeah, like you can, that's, community is so important, and in the individualistic society we live in, sometimes it can seem like all advice is advice that you need to take and do by yourself, but no, find your communities of people who, like you said, will help you close those tabs. I think that that's
And it could be
crucial.
small, it could be so tiny, and I only say this because I'm so in my head all the time, like too much in my head. Girl, I live in my head sometimes, and I'm like, wait, hold on, you have to get up and go out and experience life. But I feel like there's, you know, even if it's like tiny little things, like, you know, if you're able to go to the supermarket and like just ask somebody where the butter is, even though you absolutely know where the butter is, just to like get that human interaction. And if you are not able to go outside, like I know I found such a community in playing video games, or like going to, I'm a nerd, so I love anime, and you know, finding my anime community and like talking and like, so there's like little things that, fortunately enough, if you're able to hear this podcast, that means that that is a form of privilege that you have. So that means that you have internet access. So that means that you could find that community online if you know, put yourself out there to find it. And that's like the first small step that you can do. And everything else kind of snowballs into that. And again, everything I say this is because it's been personal experience of me just like getting lost in my own head. I feel like, I mean, it wasn't necessarily my generation, but my sister's generation. So she kind of made me watch SpongeBob. And there's an episode where SpongeBob is literally in his head, like running around, burning file cabinets and going like, help, help, or something he said, or whatever. And sometimes I literally feel like that, where I'm just like running around in my own head, not finding an escape exit. But then knowing that there's always like a fire extinguisher on the side, and that is community, and that is like finding people who are like, who will understand and who listen, because I feel like in this experience we have on this planet, we're not meant to be alone. That is like pretty impossible for people to survive alone. And I think it's important to, like, as strong as you want to be, that community and people are out here to help. Like, you will always find someone who will give you a hand to help no matter what. And it is very important to ask for help if you need help. Again, I'm saying this out loud because I'm so stubborn that sometimes I don't ask for help, and my friends are like, Jillian, just Ask for help. It's not that hard to do so. Like, people love you who you are, and no one's gonna be mad. And if they're mad to help you, then those are not friends that you need in your life. So Control Alt Delete those people. It's fine. You know?
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely easier said than done, but
Totally.
it's important. And I also want to note that you said that it doesn't matter about size or anything like that. I think in that episode of SpongeBob, it's like Patrick that helps him get out of there. And that's his one buddy, and that's all he needs. And you, like, it can be your mom. It can be whoever. But it's helpful, I think, especially if you are someone who tends to live up in your head, which I definitely relate to, Jillian. I definitely spend a lot of time up there. And it is crucial to be able to have the people in your life that you can say, hey, I'm in my head. Can you hold my hand as we exit the building? I need that. So I think that's really beautiful. Well, we are close to being out of time, but one topic that I know, this went so fast. One topic we didn't quite get to that I want to just bring up at the end. You have worked on shows and your short film, My Eyes Are Up Here, and L Word, both. Sex happens. Sex is real. And I think it doesn't get talked about at all in the disability community. Well, it doesn't get assumed outside of. There's a lot of assumptions about us that we don't have sex or we don't do these things. What was it like being on screen, holding the bar of not only disabled representation, but this kind of taboo topic and being kind of the face of that? How'd you feel about that?
I mean, not gonna lie, the first time it was brought to my attention, I internally screamed, both in horror, film, and excitement, all but to one. I was like, everything inside my body was like, "Don't do it, Jillian!" And like, I literally was like, "Absolutely." So, it wasn't my intuition telling me not to do it; it was my brain telling me not to do it. And I think it definitely, at first I was like, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. And then like it all settled in my body, and I was like, okay, Jillian, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right. We're gonna, really and I did my research, even though like I myself have a disability, but I authentically researched, which I kid you not, Googled like sex scenes with a disabled like character or whatnot, and unfortunately, and then also fortunately, I guess, because like sex is awesome, and like if it's in porn, then like that's awesome as well. But it was a little gnarly to me that it was the only thing I found. Other than like maybe like a few indie films, but that was pretty much it. And so I was like, wow, the fact that like this is like on Showtime, so a bigger audience for that matter, really like made me nervous at first. But then through like the scene was like 3 minutes, mind you. I mean, as far as like in the L Word, but it took me at least 6 months to like make sure like I had conversations with my scene partner. I had conversations with the cinematographer, like letting them know like this has to, at the end of the day, this has to look sexy. That's it, period. Like it just has to look good. As good as anybody else who has a sex scene on this show, which it's like every single episode. Like at any like multiple scenes, I'm like, it just has to look very cohesive like the other scenes are. It has to look beautiful. It has to look hot. I want people to kind of forget and then remember. I want that kind of like roller coaster of like, wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, huh? Wait, yes. Like literally that emotion roller coaster I really wanted to, because it was so important for me to not only showcase what sex could look like if your partner has some sort of disability, but also that it is as important as anybody else who doesn't have a disability, get to, showcase this part of a normal person's life, and that I think it's unfair to categorize every single person as like asexual or that they don't have sex, which, can also live, and that's very important to showcase that as well, because that's a real thing. And I think that a lot of people get really confused when someone's like, I'm asexual, and I'm like, that's fine. But it's also fine for someone to be like, I'm not. And I do enjoy that part of my life, and I think it's okay. And I'm not sure why we're even having this conversation to begin with, but here we are. So it was very empowering, and I really wanted to make sure that I was like, I was doing it for my community, but I was also doing it for myself, and hopefully with people that wasn't sure if that was even a possibility, or, younger kids who, their emotions are like literally hormones are going all over their place, but society saying, no, you can't make out with that person. No, you can't sleep with that person. Not because of like safe sex kind of reasons, but because, and solely because you have a disability, period. So that was really important to me to like showcase those nuances, and also showcase to the part of like, there's this line I say, which, mind you, I said it in our table read and they literally made me say it out loud. So it was kind of like literally a personal experience that I had, where I told a person like, you're not going to hurt me. But it's so important, because I feel like a lot of people assume that people with disabilities are very fragile. And I feel like consent and communication is important, period, whether you have a disability or not, when you're in such an intimate space. But I feel like more so, if you're going to hurt me, I will let you know. I will vocalize, no matter, what kind of vocalization or sign. If somebody's saying no, no matter how they're saying no, it's a no, Mm-hmm. But it's also, you shouldn't assume that you're going to hurt someone unless they're telling you, what to touch, what not to touch, whatever. I think communication is important, period. But in a way, I guess I'm kind of happy that that line was put on there, because I feel like a lot of people do assume that, like, we're very fragile and we're like porcelain dolls, and like any touch will break us, or like they don't want to be that person or whatever. So it was really important for me to like showcase all those like teeny little nuances, and also make a really hot scene. And that's what I tried to do in the film that I showed at Tribeca, which was LOL about a one night stand, and the whole movie is about me trying to find Plan B. And in the L word, just like having a relationship with my boyfriend on, like, that's what happens when you have a relationship, So yeah.
You succeeded. It's a very hot scene. It's a very hot scene. That's wonderful. I think that you, in so many aspects of your life and the work you're doing and the content you're creating, just truly are changing people's assumptions and making this world a better place for everyone. So I just thank you for the work you do. I am geeking out the fact that I got to talk to you today. Like, this has just been so awesome. I think you're so cool. Erin, I think you're so freaking cool. So this is just, I'm delighted.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It was great, yeah.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank you for a beautiful episode. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this. Another awesome episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong. And maybe you're starting to learn some things about disability that are right. Have a wonderful day. I did not want that episode recording to end.
No.
It was
it felt like it was 5 minutes. And it was not.
We've never gone over on a recording. We went way over on our recording time for this episode because we were just so into the conversation with Jillian. Thank you so much to Jillian for coming on and being so open with us and chatting about really important stuff. Just like we say about all of our guests, give them a follow on social media. Jillian's Instagram is really awesome, and she's just doing incredible things in the world of fashion and acting, and just also sharing her experiences with ableism out in the wild, which, as we talked about in this episode, are unfortunately all too often.
Yeah.
So give her a follow, and thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
If you liked what you heard, go ahead and subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you to our listeners, and as always, thank you to Easter Seals for giving us the space and resources to share such authentic conversations from within the disability community to our listeners.
And we'll see you next time for another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
Everything you know about disability is wrong.
This is a podcast brought to you by Easter Seals.
You know, we actually work for Easter Seals, but maybe our listeners don't know what we do.
That's true. Easter Seals is leading the way to full access, equity, and inclusion for disabled people and their families.
And did you know we've been doing this for more than a century?
This includes helping disabled people find meaningful employment and addressing healthcare needs for all ages.
We're proud to serve communities across the country and ready for the next 100 years. For more, check out easterseals.com.